Hi, I'm Kevin McDonald, and today we're going to be discussing the American Association of Water Distribution and Management's video module. We're going to be discussing cybersecurity today, but I'm going to be doing it from, I think, a slightly different approach than you might have in the past. I have 15 minutes to discuss it today, and I've really struggled with what do I talk about in 15 minutes? What could really have an impact on the world of water distribution, being it's so important to our nation as critical infrastructure. So what I decided to do was to try to do a little bit of a wake-up call. I'm not here to be gratuitous, but I do think it's important that you understand the seriousness of what we face today. A global risk report in 2018 stated that water is in the top 5 of the most important risks that we deal with. Although it doesn't discuss cybersecurity, it does point out that if something does happen in the way of an attack of cybersecurity that successfully interferes with some sort of critical water infrastructure, it could be very bad for whatever that community is or the industry that's impacted. So what I want to talk about a little bit is we're running out of time to have this conversation. I've been in this industry for about 2 decades in cybersecurity. I wrote my first report on Digital D-Day in 2005, and yet today we're just now starting to have a real dialogue about the risks to national infrastructure. We can't continue to dance around about how serious this is, and unfortunately our legislators, many of our industry experts, CEOs, executives, CIOs, and so on, and the folks that are responsible for all this are far more concerned about privacy of PII or credit card data and about your Social Security than the water that you drink and the power that you rely on to manage your life. I think it's time that we change that approach. In reality, we already know that we're being attacked. Many people say, oh, what's the big deal? Nation states are attacking us. The Department of Homeland Security recently released a cyber risks report that stated that the Russians are targeting cyber infrastructure in the United States and that water is one of the key classifications. We know for a fact that the Chinese group called the Comment Crew recently was caught coming after a fake or honey-potted system that was designed to see whether these folks would try to attack it. In a very brief time, there were multiple international state entities that were proven to be seen trying to attack our system. So at what point are we going to say, yeah, confidentiality is important, we all know that. Integrity of the data, however, and security of the data, and safety of the systems that manage our water and power and other infrastructure are what we really should be concerned about. So what are the objects or what are the problems that we see? What are the roadblocks that we're seeing today? Well, the first is financial that I see in utilities. I see a lot of utilities looking to get more funding. They have to go through what I think is a ridiculous process to get public utility commissions to approve additional funding. And that's because we're concerned more about the ratepayers paying a couple pennies more than we are about making sure that the water that they drink is actually safe and available. I think this is something we need to deal with. We need pre-approved budgets as a percentage of an overall budget rather than constantly having to go back and ask for more money. Then we need to deal with the resistance. And the resistance actually comes from an amazing number of places, but it's often internal. In order to do security, we have to change our behaviors. We have to change the way we think, the way we do things, the way we accept and receive and transmit communications, the way we do processes every day. And unfortunately, many of the people in the water and other infrastructure industries have been doing this a very long time. They don't want to change. And in order to change, and in order to secure the world, they have to change their attitude. So I think we need to deal with the social resistance, what I would call the social denial, which we see a lot of, oh, this won't happen to me, we're too small. Well, there's lots of evidence, and my friend Joe Weiss, who you've seen presenting here, will actually point out to you that it doesn't matter the size of your environment, it matters the fact that you're publicly available or that you are a target of convenience. Then we have to talk about what I call the monkey see, monkey do. I don't see it, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to hear it. I cannot tell you how many executives and people in IT that I see are like, I just don't want to talk about this. It stresses me out, it's something I can't deal with. Well, guess what? Our safety, our community, all matters that you stop the denial. Let's move forward a little bit and let's talk about what is it that we're protecting. Yeah, we're protecting waste treatment plants. And yes, we're protecting our water transport and our freshwater development. But what are we really protecting? We're protecting our families and our communities. And if we don't look at what we're doing from that perspective, then we're already failing. In the old days, water was pushed by water wheel, by air, by some sort of mill. Today, we're using very complex systems that are managed by computers and by automated systems. And unfortunately, that convenience also comes with what we are now dealing with, which is cyber risk. Now, there is a difference between the IT management systems and the ICS SCADA and the PLC controllers on the other side, but in reality, many of you have failed to separate those two systems. So when I go in and do assessments, I often find that the IT department has connected the ICS system, and they are actually accessible through that primary network. So we first need to deal with separating those, and then we need to make sure that the IT system itself is secure. Now, what does that mean? Yes, we need to keep information confidential because, God forbid someone gets your credit card and you have to cancel it. But really more importantly, the designs of these systems, the management tools that are used to deal with them, the plans of where systems are, all of the location information of where the plants are managed and where the pumping stations are. Much of that is within the corporate IT network. So while the ICS SCADA system itself may not be at risk if you have separation, you do have to be concerned that there's vitally important data. Now the other thing is if the data doesn't have integrity, if your programming information is incorrect, if your location or asset information is incorrect, how can you possibly safely manage a system that you aren't fully aware of where it is? The other problem is if you have a system attack in IT and the integrity of the billing data or the client information data or the asset data, how can you do billing and service delivery if you don't have accurate data or data that is even, more importantly, available? So let's talk a little bit now about the last and I think the most important thing we're dealing with in water in general. That's safety. If the water is there and available and it's readily being pumped out to the system, but we can't trust that it's safe, then what's the whole point of all of this? And that's why I think we need to take this a little bit more seriously and be a little bit more cognizant of the fact that, yes, confidentiality is important, but the other factors of a data integrity, reliability and availability and safety are far more important. Now let's talk about physical security. Most people don't really consider enough in the cyber world of what physical security means. They hear, oh, I have a firewall, I have antivirus, I have segmented networks, I have all these really cool things in cyber, and then I walk in, climb over the fence, break in and steal the server. So the bottom line is, you must consider that the systems themselves that manage the network, the SCADA control units themselves, and even the communication devices that are managing these devices between each other, if they're readily publicly accessible from a physical perspective, then all the cybersecurity in the world means naught. Yes, I know this all is sour, it hurts, it's painful, it's annoying, it's frustrating, and for many people it's very complicated and scary. Cybersecurity doesn't have to be that way if you take it from the perspective of small chunks at a time and bring in the right people that can help you to understand it. It does not leave such a bad taste in your mouth. Now let's talk about the current hostage situations that are occurring in the country. And this can be from the IT situation or even from a SCADA control system. We're seeing ransomware taking over networks. Now what does that mean when ransomware takes over a network? It means that you either are locked out of a system or that the system data has been made unreadable or undecipherable by whoever it is that used to have control over it. Now what's scary is that some of the IT hostage situations we're seeing today are actually done by internal actors or by service providers. I recently dealt with a very serious situation where a vendor was a cloud provider. Somebody trusted their confidential and critical operational data to this cloud provider. They got into a billing dispute. The cloud provider cut them off. This very critical company was shut down for 9 days while they got into the attorneys back and forth about whether they could get data. Now what I'm trying to tell you is back up, disaster recovery, and make sure that you never, ever, ever trust your core data to only one source. If you do that and something goes sideways, you have a fire, a theft, an IT staffer who decides to wipe out all your data, which I've also dealt with, or other problems that cause epic failure within your system, then guess what? If you don't have a good DR system, you're out of business. Now we're going to talk a little bit about what I call naughtyware. Naughtyware is where someone puts a notice on a system that says you've done something illegal and therefore you're going to write us a check. Now, why does this matter? Because unfortunately, those that are in IT, just like any other human being, may well be doing the things that these naughtyware services accuse them of. They then write a check. What they've just done is made your organization a target for ransomware and for other more extreme attacks in the future. Now, there are a lot of problems that we need to deal with in cyber, and of course, in the short time I have to deal with here today, I can't possibly cover them all. But there's a very interesting organization that you pay for as taxpayers called the National Institutes of Standards and Technology. They write special publications on everything from risk management to encryption to how do you do a risk assessment to what do you do with wireless communication security. And the nice part about it is you can take any one of those publications and transfer that into your own operations as an organization. Now, I want to recommend that you do go to the NIST organization. They have a new critical infrastructure set of documents that are a really good starting point. Now let's talk just a little bit about what you need to be doing on your own in the few minutes that I have left. If you have not inventoried your system, you cannot possibly manage it. You cannot manage security or manage an inventory or manage devices that you do not know what you have or where they are. You must patch and update your systems. If you do not do critical updates in your software, you are inviting people to exercise vulnerabilities and attack your network. Those systems that cannot be patched or updated need to be isolated from the public internet so that they may not be exposed. And they also need to be isolated in your network through network isolation or local area network controls that make it so that one part of the system cannot be infected by the system that you have. Now, passwords are important, but one of the things we all know is that passwords can be stolen. Passwords can be shared. So I am going to recommend that while you use good password hygiene, what you should also do is use a second form of authentication or out-of-band verification, whether it's through a phone system, through an application, or through some sort of a module that provides a one-time number. Use that secondary auth. That means if someone gets your password, it's irrelevant, because if they don't have that extra factor, they can't get in. Now let's talk about hidden cameras. Now you're going to think, what about hidden cameras? When I do social engineering and testing, one of the first things I do is walk over to somebody with a hidden camera and a ballpoint pen, a necklace, a watch, earphones, a tie, or some other device that allows me to stand over them and say to them, can you enter your credential for me as I look away? Well, as I'm looking away, the camera I'm wearing is not looking away. Hidden cameras are one of the biggest risks that we have today. You can buy a ballpoint pen camera in 1080p color for about $39. So to think that you have to be some sort of CIA hardcore person in order to have this technology is just not true. What I'm trying to tell you is think out of the box. Don't think just because you think you know what's going on around you that you actually do. Be careful and pay extra close attention. Now let's talk about AI and machine learning. Now, while I don't think this is any type of panacea, I do believe that many of the good solutions that we're going to see are going to come out of artificial intelligence and machine learning. On the other hand, they are already increasing the risk greatly. If the bad guys have artificial intelligence, having them help them figure out what is next or what is a possibility or where a vulnerability might be or what's the perfect combination, that's a bad thing. So if you're not at least keeping up with the most current tools that defend against things like artificial intelligence, then you're also already behind the ball. Bring your own disaster. If you have anything that you could possibly control that could stop many of the infections we see today, that would be disallowing or limiting who can bring in what devices into your network, or at minimum making sure that they cannot get to the local area network that has your critical business systems on it. Bring your own disaster is a very serious problem. Network segmentation is probably one of the most critical things you'll do in your network. Making sure that traffic of various different services or various different components of the industry or of your component business is separated so that if one part gets infected, the other part doesn't. Ransomware cannot transom a system that is blocked by logical communication. It would be isolated to the land that it's allowed to be on. So make sure you're doing network segmentation. And by the way, Here's a little puppy to make you feel better, because I know this has been a really rough conversation. Thank you for watching, and I'm Kevin McDonald.